So in D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, as a DM, the Dungeon Master, we want to create tension. And I don't want to equate tension with anxiety. Tension as in suspense. Tension as in we're going to pull the players into our table. We're going to pull them in. They're going to be avatars in the game. And every choice they make, we want it to be heightened. Heightened risk or reward. Risk versus reward. And there's a lot of great tools to do this. Utilizing the dice is one way to do it. And I want to kind of offer an example of utilizing the Dungeon Master's screen as a physical barrier. The DM screen is a great toolkit because a DM can utilize that in subtle ways, pulling in a little bit of stage magic here in subtle ways. It's much more than just a handy screen with references and charts and tables, although absolutely that's necessary from that perspective. So let's talk about a couple of examples. I'll share with you in my DM toolkit how I like to utilize this. Take it back, think about it, and try out some of these examples in your next game. The ideal scenario, the ideal D&D scenario has me sitting at a point in the table where I can set up my DM screen, and behind that have my notes and my maps and my miniatures and my dice and my snacks. And I can also now sit a little bit to the left or to the right. So this way I can interact with the players without a physical barrier between us. They're not just going to see like this half cut off floating head behind the DM screen. No, we can physically interact and enjoy the game and talk. And I can glance over when I need to, just to kind of see where are they on the map, where are they in the dungeon, what's going on. And then when we get to the encounters and we have to roll for initiative, at that point I can transition back to behind the DM screens. This way I can track initiatives and monsters and stats and do all the D&D math hammer that we need to. That's the ideal setup. Now, of course, you play D&D wherever you play D&D. There was one time where we were going to a games day, myself and a bunch of the other club members. We were driving down from New York to Baltimore. So about 4 or 5 hours somewhere in there, depending on traffic. And since we were going to a convention, Warhammer 40,000, a miniature game, but we have all this stuff with us, all of our miniature armies and terrain and other things. And the car was way too small, and we're all packed in there. We are packed in. And I'm all the way in the back with my friend, Brother Captain James, and we decided, let's play some D&D, because some players brought their D&D character sheets that we were going to play after, and I literally just had a set of dice. That's it. I don't even know who passed me the dice, but they're like, Fritz, you're going to DM, and we've got another 3.5 hours in this car ride. So pull up some adventure that you're thinking of, and you're going to DM. So I'm literally sitting there rolling the dice in my lap, and we had so much stuff in the car, I really can't see anybody. And we played D&D, and we had a lot of fun doing that. That's kind of an extreme. But you play where you are, ideally the ideal setup. So with this, utilizing the dice, there will be times I will ask the players to make certain rolls. Make certain, doesn't matter, D12, D6, D20, and I'll look over at my notes, maybe write something down. I'm not writing anything down. I mean, imagine, so here's the setup. I should have led with the setup. You're in the dungeon, you're on level 3, you're making good progress. You know the artifact is probably located level 4, level 5. You've been taking good notes, you've been looking at the map, you've uncovered a couple of secret doors. You are going through the dungeon. There's a pause, and the party's kind of talking internally. Where were you going to go? What are we going to do? And Fritz asks you, can you make a listen check? Okay, you pick up your D20, you roll it. You got a 10 plus 8 for your adjustment, 18. Okay. You don't hear anything. Or, okay, thank you, that's good. You're like, well, why is Fritz asking for a listen check? Why, or perception check, or if it's AD&D, can you make a wisdom check to see, you thought you heard something, you don't know. Utilizing the dice, because again, anytime you roll the dice, crazy things can happen. So utilizing the dice from that perspective, have your players just every now and then make a random roll. First thing they're going to think of is, well, what'd we miss? I didn't hear anything. He says, the DM says they didn't hear anything, or you didn't see anything, or, you resisted something. Well, what does that mean? What's going on? It creates this sense of urgency. It creates this sense of urgency in exploring. So now let's talk about fights, encounters. How can we drive the tension in the encounters? Normally, full transparency, I will have all of my rolls out in front of the table. I want my players to be able to see it. Some DMs will use a dice pit. Others will have a dice tower. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. But ideally speaking, when there's an encounter, I will shift up a little bit. So I'm behind the DM screen, but you can actually see me. I can make my notes, and I roll the dice. Usually I actually stand up if I can. So this way I can interact with the players. They can see the dice rolls. I roll everything in front of the DM screen. Take your time with that D20. That ogre is making the swing with the club. He's wound up. He's ready to go. Pick up that D20. Roll it. If you're using a dice cup for the kinetic sound, have it going a little bit. Dump it out. Lift it up. I won't say drag out your dice rolls, but don't blast them out. Let the players see that D20 tumbling a little bit, rolling a little bit. It's got to be on the table or it doesn't count, even for the DM. And utilizing from that perspective. Now, there are times, this is the DM play style. Some DMs go with the dice no matter what. You got hit, you got crushed, you're dead, too bad. Welcome to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And that would be correct. And then there's times where a DM might say, you weren't playing very smart. You were taking a lot of risks. You were pushing the envelope. I gave you a lot of clues. You did it anyway, and you died. Welcome to D&D. But then there's times just the dice, players playing smart. They're doing well. They're maybe even being a little cautious, but the dice are just absolutely killing them. The dice are just killing them, crushing them. And that next blow might kill them. So being able to hide the dice every now and then, and I don't often do this, but it's there. If I'm rolling the dice out in front and you have like 4 hit points left, and if you get hit, you die. And maybe we're not at the part of the story yet where you necessarily want to die, or that wouldn't be fair to kill a character. Because again, I tend to be very much hands-off with character death. If it happens, it happens. But sometimes there are cases where just like a string of 4 or 5 or 6 bad dice rolls, it's just not there. If I roll and I hit and you see it, well, now you've gotten hit. I can't take that back. But then all of a sudden, if I switch a couple of dice rolls from behind the DM screen and I roll that 20, which would be a natural crit, and most likely I'm going to confirm that crit, then I can say the ogre just missed. Or if I roll to hit and I roll the damage behind, instead of taking 12 points, you took 10. You're still up, or you're just unconscious. It's a way for sometimes when you want to hide the dice or show the dice, it's a nice option to utilize the DM screen. But ultimately, using the dice to raise and build tension in the game, how can you do that? How can you use the DM screen as your toolkit?